Hi, everyone, and welcome to another installation of Love Talks. My name is Andrea Hill. I'm the host of Love Talks, and you'll see me here live every month with a different guest speaking about really heart-based, important, often avoided topics. So with the sole goal of helping you to expand, awaken, and broaden your romantic life, your relationship life, your dating life, you in your entirety. And I am thrilled to introduce you to my guest for this month. His name is Jerome Braggs, and I'm going to give you a brief little bio, and we're going to dive right into it because I know we're going to devour this hour with conversation about this topic, as I had alluded to in some of my posts leading up to tonight's talk, that this is something that we avoid. And the really sneaky part is that we don't even know we're avoiding it when we're avoiding it. So we're going to talk about how to even create awareness around our own emotional wounds and how to even begin the healing process. So welcome to all of you that are watching this evening. I encourage you to post your questions as we go along, and we'll pause and address those, and we'll leave a little time at the end as well. But without further ado, first and foremost, Jerome, thank you so much for being here tonight. I'm so excited to have you on. I found this man through one of my best friends, Jill Prescott. I don't even know how Jill discovered you, but we can talk about that. And they're doing something really special, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But I was just sharing my gratitude before we hopped on, because he's someone that I feel teaches and shares in a way that really invites you to be part of the conversation, to with compassion and curiosity to look within. And I think those are such important pieces to have, at least for me, in a teacher or someone that you look to in areas of your life that you really feel like you're kind of lost. So thank you for that again. I'm just going to keep on saying thank you. So without further ado, let me give you a little introduction, and then Jerome, I'll let you expand on this. So Jerome, who's also affectionately known as the Soul Medicine Man, is a highly gifted, intuitive, inspirational speaker and modern day medicine man. In 2005, Jerome was diagnosed with AIDS and kidney failure, then given 48 hours to live. On his deathbed, Jerome had a near-death experience in which he was told the key to true healing and well-being is to come back home to your soul. That experience catalyzed a multi-year rite of passage where he learned how to truly heal himself and create a deeply delicious life through the practice of coming back home to his soul. Today, Jerome uses his intuitive gifts and the wisdom he gained through his journey to teach people around the world to heal and live deeply, well, and delicious lives through the miraculous practice of coming back home to the soul. Oh, how wonderful is that? Just want to kind of sink into that. That's lovely. So tonight, you and I are talking about our emotional wounds. And the process, beginning the process, continuing the process, which is really an ongoing process of healing those wounds and what that even means. So as I just shared through your bio, you came to this point of realization, probably a little more of a heavy brick to the head of a wake-up call than a lot of people get, but sometimes that's what we need, and you've used yours for so much good. Can you speak to more about what your journey has been and really what that source of discovery has meant for you?
Yeah, so what you may not hear in that bio is that I didn't have a clue what that meant at the time. That wasn't something that, it wasn't something that I had this big, with a lot of people that have near-death experiences, some of those people will have the whole full awareness and they'll come back and they'll have a lot of understanding. I did not have that. My understanding came through the journey that followed that. So, what I had to learn about coming back to the soul is very much, in essence, what we're doing, what all of us are doing at any given moment in our lives, is we're trying to return our being, our way of being, back to the wholeness of our divinity, back to love, really. At the very simplest of the terms, we are trying to return our way of being, how we feel about ourselves, how we think about ourselves, how we show up for ourselves, and how we show up for others in the world, back to the truth of our divinity and to the energy and vibration of love. So that was really what my whole healing journey was after my near death experience, was to understand what that really is, what that really takes, what it doesn't take. And the very core of it was I had to look at all the places where I was resisting that. So all the places basically where I was withholding myself from love, right? Because that's really the only thing that can happen. Like, we're somehow in our belief systems or our vibration or our behavioral patterns, we are withholding ourselves from the truth of ourselves, from the divinity of ourselves, which I call love, which I learned was really what love is.
Mhm.
So healing my emotional wounds, since it was a huge part of healing my body, because I knew that what I learned in my journey was all illness and all disease is really energetic. It starts on the energetic level and it manifests on the physical. And what that means is it starts in the emotional body. So it
Mm.
starts in how we feel about ourselves and how we feel about the world around us. Not just, acutely, this is how I feel today, but habitually, chronically, like what your dominant kind of arc is for how you feel about yourself and how you feel about the world. And if that feeling is disconnected from love, then your body cannot stay well, because the body was literally created to house the love that you are. So
Mm.
when you're not connected to love, your body does not have the energy that it needs to be well. And when you're not connected to love, which I also call the soul. So you'll hear me call those two things synonymously: the greater love with a capital L, and the soul, which is the soul is the very vibration and the essence and the source of love. But when you're disconnected from that somehow, and your emotional wounds disconnect you from that. So when you're disconnected from that energy, your body cannot stay well for very long, and your life cannot work well. It cannot work at its best. You can't manifest your best and highest, nor can you attract your best and highest to you. No matter what you do, no matter what your vision boards look like, no matter what workshops you go to, no matter all of that, if you have a disconnection where you are withholding yourself from love somehow, that's going to get manifested and reflected out into all of your experiences, all of the events in your life, all the relationships that you have, and in the health of your body. So that was pretty much what my journey was about, was looking at where were all the places that I had wounds, right? Which my definition of wound is a little different than the traditional Webster dictionary, which is a wound really is defined as an injury, but the only real injury we have is the disconnection from
Mhm.
love, the disconnection from the truth of who we really are. And there are some core truths we're going to talk about tonight, but there are the disconnection from your truth somehow, and whatever happened that made that happen, right? There's a myriad of things that can happen to us that can make us disconnect from that truth somehow in our belief systems, in our consciousness, and in how we feel, which I call our vibration. When
Mhm.
you disconnect from that, you have a wound, and that wound, when it goes unaddressed, bleeds over everything and everybody, especially over the people that didn't cause it. So that's why it continues. No matter what you do, no matter what you try to put on it, you can put a band-aid over it, you can put all the different things we've learned to try and soothe and distract ourselves from wounds, but they're still bleeding, and they are bleeding and staining everything. So I learned to discover what the real wounds are, how they negatively affect our lives, and how to really heal those, so that you're reconnected to love, you're reconnected to the truth and the divinity of yourself. And now you can create from that. Now you experience from that, and life gets so much more delicious when you do.
I love that. Delicious. Let's use that
Yeah.
word a lot tonight.
Yes, let's.
So you said something interesting, and sort of my radar peaked up a bit. I love the explanation, because I think a lot of the time people don't even know what that means. They just think there's something wrong with me. And then they don't even know where to start to go looking.
Yeah.
But you touched on something that I think will help drop some breadcrumbs for some people that are maybe first being introduced to this tonight while watching us, is you said the ways in which we try to dress or band-aid these wounds, how we try to sort of muddle our way through, because I think oftentimes we're not even aware that they're there, even though they're kind of running our show. Can you offer some ways that we can do this in order to mask these hurts or this disconnection from ourselves and love, so that maybe some people tonight might get a little ding, ding, ding?
Yes. So, what happens when you have, I love that question. So, there are kind of there are others, but there are three basic truths about us that when we get disconnected from them somehow, and you get disconnected in two ways. You either get traumatized out of it, right? Some external event happens to you that causes you to disconnect. And the trauma is not the event. The trauma is the disconnection, by the way. Because if that event happened and you weren't disconnected, it would have no negative effect on your life. Because actually the root word of trauma is Greek and it means wound. So the actual injury to your being was the disconnection. So you get traumatized or you get socialized out of this, right? So it's your culture, your caregiving system, the authority figures around you can make you believe something different than these truths. And the three truths that every soul comes in knowing. So every being that is here is a soul, and every soul comes into this manifestation of this world knowing these three things about them and feeling these three things about them. One is there's nothing wrong with you and that you are a wholly good thing. So that means your whole being is a good thing. It is a worthy thing. It is enough. It is an enough thing, right? The second thing is that this world that you are in is a safe space for you to be, especially for you to be all of yourself, and that the prime directive for being here is to have fun. The third thing is that all of your needs will be met and that all of your needs are okay. Right. So they go together. So that this universe is an ask and it's given universe. The universe does not withhold anything from you because it loves you. So you understand that, right? And you know that whatever you want and whatever you need is an okay thing. You look at a baby is not ashamed that it needs its mother's milk. It is not ashamed that it needs to eat, right? So you can see these things very prevalent in most children, especially children before the ages of kind of 5 years old, especially babies. You can see these truths. They are the embodiment of these truths because this is what they know, right? When they come in. When you get traumatized or socialized out of that, when you start to believe, when you're made to believe somehow that something is wrong with you, whether something's wrong with how you look, or something's wrong with, your intellect, or something's wrong with, whatever it is about you, your gender or something is wrong with you, and something about you is not wholly good, right? So that's the first trauma. Or that you're not safe some type of way, right? That this is a dangerous place. And this can all happen usually kind of in the caregiving system. So if you get made to feel that this world is really not safe, or this world is really not fun for you, or that somehow your needs won't be met, maybe your mother was late to feed you when you were crying, or maybe you had a very neglecting caregiving system somehow. So this is how you get traumatized out of that. And that's where the wound starts. That's where the wound starts to form, and it gets bigger as you grow older. But what ends up happening is you try to, especially around if there's something you feel is wrong with you, you will try. If something is wrong with you in childhood, what your childhood brain says, if they figure this out, they're going to withhold love from me. They're going to abandon me or reject me somehow. And that child brain, the human child brain, processes that belief as I'm going to die, because that actually will happen if your caregivers reject you or abandon you, if they completely deny you somehow. You do not have the capacity in your child body to defend yourself or to care for yourself. So that equates death.
Mhm.
So the wound says something's wrong with me. And if they find out about it, it's almost like a death.
Mhm.
So what you begin to do is you have two kind of protection devices that come up. You either try to defense mechanisms to keep this wound safe, to keep yourself safe. You either try to protect yourself or you try to soothe it. It's protection or you're trying to soothe, right? And the protection stuff we do is, you may hide. You might hide the aspect about yourself that you think is wrong. So, for instance, a lot of people who were made to believe their sexuality was wrong at an early age, they will hide themselves. They won't really truly be themselves, and or you'll try to reject that part of you or really suppress it some type of way. So there's a lot of that goes on, and it's not just in sexuality. It could be your personality, right? It could be
Mhm.
your intellect. It could be something about you that you were made to feel is wrong, so you will try to do something. um, you know per- Perfectionism is another part that happens
Mhm.
around this one, where if I have all of my T's and crossed and all of my I's dotted and everything's together, they won't see this, they won't notice this, right? But in order for you to do that, when the protection and the soothing devices are usually at the detriment to your well-being.
Mhm.
So you will do these things, right? You'll overstress. You're hiding parts of yourself. So you're never fully present. You never bring all of yourself to the table. You never feel safe to bring all of yourself to the table, because that's another thing. You don't feel safe. So you'll try to do whatever it is that makes you try to feel safe, and you'll try to be in control of everything. So you're always stressed out. You're draining your life force energy. You're never really being yourself, which is literally the counterpoint for why you came. So you never live your purpose because you're
Mhm.
not really being who you are. You're denying or compartmentalizing or abandoning some aspect of yourself, right? And so you create this story that says, I'm not enough. And in order to try and be enough, this is what I need to do, right? And this is how I need to behave in the world. And that way of behaving and that way of feeling about yourself is always in direct opposition to your divinity.
Mhm.
It's always in direct opposition to the truth that you are enough at all times, that you're a wholly good thing, that this world is safe for you to be in. And so here's the other thing about the wound. So you have these, and then you have these soothing devices like the addictions, and the like the overeating, the drugs, the sex. This was something that I had to go through. That was one of my protection devices, was the sex, because I felt like there was something wrong with me. I felt specifically like there was something wrong with my body, and that I grew up a bigger kid. And so I was teased a lot, and I was made to believe that my body as it was not enough and it was unlovable. And so how I began to soothe that was sex. Sex was the thing that, when if somebody had sex with me in that moment, to my mind, it meant in that moment I was attractive
Mhm.
and I was lovable. But it wasn't true intimacy and love, so that it was a toxic thing, right? But those are what happens. You have these stories. These stories require behaviors from you that either soothe or they protect. And those soothing and protecting behaviors and beliefs disconnect you from your soul. Because they are, those soothing and protective behaviors are based on shame and fear. That is the core of all of them. They are based on shame. And again, this is not your fault. The wound is not your fault, because it was placed usually by some type of traumatization or socialization, but it puts shame and fear into your body. And wherever the energy of shame or fear resides within you, your soul cannot be in that same place. That is literally, it literally is a discharging energy. It's like a shadow. So this is what
Mhm.
we call the shadow. So if you think about your soul as like the sun shining down, right? Shame and fear is the thing that comes and it resists it. So it blocks the light of the soul from shining through you. And so that's really kind of, might hear some people call it the shadow, but that's really what it is. It's the part where you're withholding the light of your soul from shining, where you're withholding the energy of love from pouring through you, by holding some portion of shame, or fear, really. Shame or fear within your system.
I love that description. That brings a lot more clarity, where I think a lot of people get lost in the languaging of, the journey through, the darkness or the shadow of your soul, and they don't really know what that means. But that analogy is makes for a lot of clarity, at least for me, and I'm hoping for everyone that's watching as well. I do want to acknowledge Julie. She popped in with just a one word that said stories. Now, let's talk about stories, because they're more or less our manifestation of our original wound. They're our rationalization of what's happened to us.
Yes.
And I would assume another way to self-soothe as well. Can you speak to our storytelling?
Yes. So the story you tell about yourself is literally the blueprint for which your life gets created, because the universe, its entire job, its entire responsibility, well, I won't say the entire, but it's the main one, is to make your personal truths become real. So they are whatever your personal truth that you hold about yourself, which is what you're defining as true about you, what you feel about yourself, and what you're defining as true about the world around you. It has to become a real and affirmed and confirmed life experience for you, right? So it's vitally important to figure out what story you're telling and what story you'd rather tell instead. But when you start to have the core wound, which is the original disconnection, right? So whatever it is, you'll be able to find, and usually if something's wrong with you, it'll either be something's wrong with your body somehow, like the color of it, the shape of it, the gender of it. Something's wrong with your intellect, like your smarts, or something's wrong with your personality, right? So how you show up in the world, or your sexuality, right? Your identity. So when that kind of happens, you start to run this story that says there's something wrong with me, right? And you have to run this story in your head about what ends up starting to happen is I have to fix this somehow. So you're always in this kind of rat race of trying to fix this thing that you think is wrong with you. So if it's your body, you're either always dieting, or you have issues with that, or you're overworking out and you're always judging yourself. You can find out again where your wound is by how you feel about yourself, right? If you do not feel that you are wholly good, right? So if yeah, I'll be good enough when this, or I'll be good enough if this, or if this goes away about me, then I'll fully be, I'll be lovable, or I'll be deserving, or I'll be worthy then, or if this comes to me about me, right? That's the pure key to tell you have a wound around believing you are wholly good. If you are worried and you feel unsafe in the world, right? Especially if you feel like there's some aspect of your being that is not safe. That was another one of my core wounds. I had a few. I was wounded in several places, right? So I did not feel my sexual expression was a fully safe place, was fully safe for me to live into, right? I realized I was the same gender loving person at a very young age, and I felt it in the energy of the air that was not okay where I was. And so I hid that, and that began a core wound for me that said it's not okay for me to be fully myself, right? It's not safe. It's not safe here. So you can, do you feel fully safe to express? It doesn't, whether it's your sexuality or your identity or your personality or some aspect of, your gender or your color or do you feel wholly safe to embrace all of that in the world just as it is, without trying to hide or suppress or fix or rearrange or change anything, right? That's how you find out where this wound is. Also, how trusting are you in the world, right? Do you believe that your needs will be met? Or are you afraid that you can't trust in the universe? You have to be in control. You have to hold. You have to make things happen. This is behind a lot behind this particular mantra. There's just really, which is really heavy. I'm surprised even in spiritual circles of like making things happen, and that actually is a trauma response because if when you are connected with your divinity, right, when you don't have not been traumatized out of the truth of your divinity, there's nothing you have to make happen. There's more you let not you there's more you let happen because life loves you already. This is an ask and it's given universe. There's nothing being withheld from you, right? And so if you do not fully believe in that, that's also another kind of red light that you have a wound around that, because that's what the truth of you is. Again, babies are perfect master teachers because they are not getting up out of like forcing themselves to walk out of the crib and believing they're not going to get their mother's milk, or they're not going to be fed, or they're not going to get what they understand. And you come into this world understanding in your mother's womb that your nutrients and everything, you're not pushing on her. You're not trying to come out of the womb early to get anything. You know that everything's going to be given, and it is. And so this is the natural order of who you are. And if there's any part of your being that does not trust in life, that is scared of life in some type of way, in whatever way that is, and is ashamed of yourself in any type of way, those are direct flags that there is a wound there that is being begged to be healed. And the healing is the whole healing journey. Really, you can take as many paths to it as you want, but the entire journey is just to reconnect yourself back to the truth of your soul and the feeling of it, like what your soul knew when it came in, which is what I call your innocence. Now you're coming back home to your innocence. So what your soul knew when you came in here about yourself and how you felt, right? You were joyous. You were seeking joy every day. You were not judging any aspect of your being. You were expressing your being, and you were looking at life with wide open eyes and excitement, and being able to be fully present in any moment and engage with the people that are in your life with the energy of love in your being. Which is why we're so in love with babies, because they embody the energy of love. And love is highly, 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 highly attractive. It is the most attractive thing. So whoever has embodied who they really are, which is the energy of love, they are highly attractive to people. And we just want to like touch them, put our hands all over them, really. But in a way, in a very respectful way and not a traumatizing way.
Yeah. So I want to acknowledge the buts that I'm hearing. Like it's good I love that you have offered for people a way to recognize them. I mean, Julie, bless her, says, I have a lot of them. And I think we all do. And the first stage is having the awareness that that's what's going on. Now, you've given us 3 markers as to where they have originated from, or where the disconnection has arisen. And then have said it's this journey back home to our innocence and back to love again. But if you've been through, and there's the but, if you've been through something that was so traumatic, or you feel so deeply disconnected, where do you even begin? Because when you've got a story running your show, you're looking for proof and validation of that story. That's why we make the choices that we do, especially in relationship. You did a lovely share the other day about, which I think I shared today, which is, doesn't matter how much like clearing of energy or cord cutting or what have you that you do, if you don't heal that wound, you're going to continue to attract the same person over and over again. And I love the quote, life will deliver you the same lesson until you learn it. So where does one even begin?
Yeah. So one is the absolute acceptance that what's showing up in your life is a mirror of your internal world. When you can accept that fully, you are ready. Because what we're trained to do in our culture, which is the antithesis of what's actually true, is that what's out in our external world is coincidence, and you need to fight it, and you need to be at war with it. And all that's happening is there are two things at play in the creation of our lives and what gets manifested, right? There's the places where we are in alignment with our divinity, and there's the places where we're not. And both of those places, both of those stories create. Both of those stories are the cause of manifestation in our life and what gets attracted to our life. So the good feeling stuff, right, is a reflection of where we're really in alignment with love. The not so good stuff is that. So when you get honest about, okay, I've got some stuff in my life that doesn't feel good to me, that doesn't taste good to me, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not delicious. So I need to look within, and I need to look at, how do I really feel about myself, right? So how do I feel? Overall, like, am I scared? And your life will show you, right? Because how does your life really feel to you? Does it feel draining? Does it feel stressed? Are you worried a lot? Are you ashamed a lot? When you get that, then healing is always about experiencing the opposite energy. It's about experiencing the opposite energy. So whether it's something you're healing in your body, or whether it's something you're healing in your life, when you get to the core of how this makes me feel. So I have this relationship pattern that's happening, right? And let's say your relationship pattern was I'll use mine. So we're talking about healing and breaking through. So one of the relationship patterns I had was I could always get the attention of somebody I really liked, no matter who they were. I don't care who they were. If I liked them, I could get their attention and we could start dating, but I could never keep their attention. There was a pattern that would happen that we'd go on a date or two. It'd be the time of my life. It'd be the time of their life. And all of a sudden I wouldn't hear from them anymore. Right. And when I looked at that, I had to see, how does this make me feel? How does this experience happening over and over make me feel? It makes me feel unwanted. It makes me feel undesirable. It makes me feel like maybe I'm not attractive enough. I'm attractive enough to get them. This was something I was very clear about. I'm attractive enough to get their attention, but I'm not attractive enough to keep their attention. How long have I really felt like that? Is question number two. Because then you can see, right, that this is not just something that like just started. It's something you've been feeling for a long time. Well, I've been feeling undesirable and unattractive ever since I was a little kid, right? And so this the root, you get to the core wound. So what's the opposite of that? What is the opposite of feeling like that? Well, the opposite of that is feeling attractive, feeling desirable, feeling like I'm enough, like I'm good enough, right? What do I need to do? What can I do right now? Not 5 years from now, but just tomorrow. What can I do to feel a little bit more like that? Right. So maybe that's, oh, I can go to the gym. Maybe that's, oh, this is the healing portion is you're healing three things. You're healing your belief system. You're going to heal your vibration, which is your emotional system. And you're going to heal your behavioral patterns, right? So how you show up for your life, like your way of being. So the things that are going to help you, how do I feel, are going to be a little bit of behaviors, and they're going to be addressing your emotions, right? So you're looking at, maybe I want to feel safer in my life. Maybe the thing that my thing was, I don't feel smart and I want to feel smarter. So whatever that is, you're going to look at what are some behavioral steps that you can do right now that will help you feel that way. And how would you be thinking about yourself now if that was true for you? What would you be thinking differently? Because this is how the wound thinks. This is what the story of the wound says, right? So Jerome's not enough. He's too fat. He's this, he's that, he's whatever. So if Jerome is lovable, he feels wholly lovable. He feels wholly enough. What's his story there? What is he telling himself, right? Craft that story, right? Literally get out a pen and paper or sit at the computer and literally write out, here's what I think about myself when I'm feeling enough. Here's how I see my life. Here's how I move. And now you've got to begin to implement those into the consciousness, right? Because what's the thing that's happening is you cannot keep running the wounded story and get a well life.
Mm-hmm.
You can't get the well version of you out of the
Yeah.
wounded story. You have to begin to tell yourself the well version story. You have to begin to behave as the well version of you behaves, right? And the well version is exactly the opposite energy of whatever this situation is making you feel like. And you can use the situation that hurts the most in your life to look at that and become aware of where your wound is creating that and the steps you need to take out of that. There's a lot of different modalities you can do to reconnect to the soul stuff, but the real truth of it, the core, I like to cut it down to the simplest thing. You have got to do the work of loving yourself. Now, this is, and I don't mean self-care. I don't mean going to get a massage and buying the cute shirt at the store. I'm talking about the real truth of what loving yourself means, which is you've got to do the work of putting yourself in the vibration of love every day. And here's the thing, love is a multifaceted vibration. So it's not just I stand in front of the mirror and I tell myself I'm cute. That's one aspect of love, because that's appreciation, which the practice of appreciation is a part of love. It will shift your being and return you into that. But there are 5 other elements of love that are rarely talked about. And this is what I learned in my journey that really helped me heal myself. Right. Acceptance is a huge part of love. That's number 2. So can you embrace all of your being? Can you stop trying to reject parts of you? Can you stop abandoning parts of you? Can you stop hiding? Can you bring every piece of your being into the light? Because that's where it belongs. No matter how ugly you think it is, no matter how, dark you think it is, can you stop trying to push it down? Because anything that is suppressed cannot heal. There is no healing in suppression. So you've got to, stop suppressing your being. That's a part of it, right? So doing the work of appreciation, acceptance, doing the work of feeling safe and at ease. That's another piece of love. If you think about the spaces where you feel the most at love, you feel safe and at ease in those spaces. Any space where you don't feel safe and at ease, you don't feel the energy of love, because that's a piece of it.
So can we I'm going to pause you there for just one moment, because I had a conversation with a girlfriend today, and we talk about certain words, and you're giving clarity beautifully around what really love means and how to show up in resonance with it. But there's some words where I think, especially in this day and age with social media and memes and everything else that are thrown around, and for some people, if they're so disconnected from safety, they either don't know what it is or what to even do with that. So if we can speak to how to create that for yourself. So what comes up for me is that for me, it's been healing wounds around finance and feeling disempowered. And then there's a component of unsafety, like not being safe there. So what I've come to realize in doing my work around that wound is it's about not giving away my power and playing the story of woe-y me and choosing to stay in a place of victimhood. So it's been about empowering myself to make me feel safe, to be educated so I know what good decisions to make, to pay my bills on time, to know responsibly where my money's. That, for me, creates a feeling of safety. So I think it might be different for different people, but I wanted to give a little example there, because safe can be such a large, encompassing word. And even safety in our own sexuality, when perhaps you grew up in a home where you have been conditioned to be completely disconnected and that sex is dirty or it's wrong or it's bad. It's reestablishing that new relationship with it that's right for you, that feels good for you. So do you want to add to that at all, Jerome?
Yeah. So safety is the feeling and the energy of being at peace, not feeling threatened in any type of way or to any part of your being. There's no threat. You don't feel there's a threat coming, or that if a threat came, that you are unprepared to handle it. And so that could be in several different parts of your being. Just like you spoke, you could feel unsafe in your finances. You could feel unsafe in your relationships. You can feel unsafe in a lot with your sexuality, or whatever that is. So whatever you need to address to bring your being, and your inner wisdom knows the path to address that, if you go in and ask it. But you know what's bothering you around that. Sometimes you need to set boundaries, right? And this is something with those of us who have a core wound. This is something a lot of times we are not really good at. I won't say a lot of times, most of the time, almost all the times. We're not good at boundaries and saying no, and not just saying no to things we don't want to do, but also using our power, the power of our voice, to speak out about what's okay and what's not okay with us, what's important to us, what needs to be valued and held and respected. Because that's another aspect of love. Honor and respect is another aspect of love that's not talked a lot about. And one of the ways we put ourselves back into it, and we bring that energy of it back into our bodies, is we amp up the honor and respect we have for ourselves. So you set more boundaries. You're really clear about speaking up for what you need, right? That's also can help you feel safe when you finally ask for what you need, right? And all of those different things. So there's many different ways, wherever your feeling of threat is, right? And wherever you feel like there's a threat to your being, you need to address that and bring yourself back in. I see somebody said people pleasers. Yeah. That's exactly correct. Like, that's most of when we're wounded. That's actually why you become a people pleaser, is because what happens is you have some core wound. It's usually saying that your need won't get met unless you perform a certain way. Unless you're really nice or really sweet, unless you press down your voice and you don't speak up. Like, and a lot of us and our parents, and this is not even just like, we're not talking about bad parents or bad caregivers, because this is just something our parents can do and not even be aware that's happening. But in the household, right? If you were asking for something, and maybe your mother had a really hard day, or your caregiver had a really hard day at work, or they were really stressed out that day, they could not deal with your request at that moment. So they may have punished you, or they may have told you to be quiet or whatever. And so you thought, in order to you being your authentic self, right? And just asking in your authentic way was not okay. That was the subconscious message that went into your spirit. That's not okay. So in order for me to get my needs met, I need to be really sweet. I need to not speak up for myself. I need to not complain. I need to not say that's not okay for me. So you become a people pleaser. You become a doormat. You let people walk over you because you were taught in some type of way that if you spoke up for yourself, if you spoke up and you said no in any type of way. Like, think about how many of you were really allowed to say no as kids without receiving some type of punishment from that no, right? So you in your system is no is unsafe for me to say no, and I won't get my needs met. So I need to be a people pleaser in order to get my needs met some type of way. But you end up not meeting your needs. You end up meeting their needs, and your needs continue to go unmet, which drained the love energy out of you again. Yeah.
Love that. Love that. Now, did we touch on all 5?
No. So we got love, we got appreciation, acceptance, honor, ease, right? Ease and safety. And then the last one that is rarely talked about, that is so important, is joy. Joy. Actually feeling joy, actually feeling joy in the system, joy in the body, joy. That's where the love of your life, like the love of life, comes from, right? So are you connected to what your passions are? Like, are you doing what your passions are? Are you having fun? Do you have a healthy relationship with pleasure? right? These aspects of you, again, if you think about when you came in as a kid, you are solidly connected to that.
Yeah.
Kids are they're looking for the next fun thing. They find fun in everything. They're all about pleasure and the taste and touch of everything and enjoying it. That's what life is supposed to be about.
Yeah.
And we
Woo.
get socialized out of that.
Yes.
And what people often don't associate as joy is an aspect of love.
Mm-hmm.
So again, if you think about the places where you feel the most loved, there's an happiness energy there. And when happiness and joy is not in your system, it is literally toxic to your being. It's literally toxic to your life. It's toxic to your health, because it's an aspect of love, and you need love to live well.
Yeah. 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 I don't know what's happening. I don't know if you can see them popping up or not, but for some reason I can't see the comments when I want to show them on the screen. They're not popping up. So I just want to acknowledge some people that have been sharing some stuff, because there's been some ding, ding, ding going on. And I want to circle back around to that word pleasure. So Jill says, ooh, that one hits home. I carried that far into my life. And Julie, I think, went ding, ding around the word joy, word of the year. You need love to survive. Oh yeah. Yeah. We can't survive without it. And when our reserves are low, life is so not pleasurable. But pleasure is huge, because I think we're taught that it's too much when we want to enjoy pleasure or become pleasure seekers, that we're selfish in some way. So here's your big permission slip. Be a pleasure seeker, enjoy it and share it with others. And that's an extension of spreading the love around. Absolutely. How are you doing for time? Because I'm just having a hell of a good time on here. It's what keeps us upright, says Jill. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So we could talk about this for hours. It has been so eye-opening. I really love how you share things. I think people that have watched tonight and will see the replay, this will be of high service, because you explain things in such a way that I think really connects the dots for people. Because as I said before, there's these arching words that we use and bandy about, and love yourself. Well, what does that even mean? And how do you end up doing it? And if you're carrying around a bunch of emotional wounds that you're not even aware are there and are running your show, how do you find them? Where do you start? And how can you step into them? And I feel that we've really answered those this evening, at least given people some giant breadcrumbs to follow in order to start their own journey. And recognition is so huge, when I think oftentimes people keep so quiet and small because they think they're alone. They're the only ones that are going through this. And I appreciate these conversations, because it allows people to know that they're not alone, and that actually the majority of us are sharing the same wounds. And when we can speak about them, that recognition allows us to own our own, so we can begin our healing journey. So thank you so much for that. Now, I want to have time enough here. We've got 10 minutes left before Love Talks wraps tonight. I always wrap the show with asking my guests 3 questions. And then I want to have time to talk about what you're up to and where can people find you. And I know my lovely friend, Jill Prescott, who we spoke about at the beginning of the talk tonight, has popped on. And I know you two are doing something really meaningful and magical and powerful and necessary right now in the world. So I want to make sure that we have time for that as well. So without further ado, I ask each of my guests, we talk about being in the resonance and energy and vibration of love. And I feel that gratitude is a great way to be an expression of this. So if there were 3 things right now in your life that you could express a deep level of gratitude for, what would they be?
The presence of the stray dog that found her way into my backyard. We're almost at the year anniversary. So I'm really grateful for our relationship and the healing we've done with that. I am grateful for the clarity I'm getting around my message and my work and the importance of love on the planet. And I am grateful for new recipes to try. I love cooking and I love eating. And I got some new recipes and I'm quite excited about those. So I'm grateful for those. Those will be my 3 tonight.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you. Yeah, food can be such an expression of love as well.
Mm-hmm.
Now, with the journey that you've had and the clarity that you're getting in your teachings and, even the collaborations and all the work that you're doing now, at this point in your life, if there's one thing that you could speak to as that you know to be really true, what is that?
The entire journey of life is only about love, where you're giving it to yourself well and where you're withholding it from yourself well. And every aspect of your life is a reflection of that.
Yeah, love that. And I love that journey back home to, to your soul, back home to innocence. Love that.
It all gets better when you do.
And enjoy the process. Enjoy the process. There's no quick fixes. That's part of the action, is loving yourself into fullness. So yeah, I love that. And with that word that we have used a lot this evening, what is your definition of love?
My definition of love is to give myself or align myself with the energy, the vibration of love every day and unconditionally. So with those 5 things we talked about, those energies, can I give those to my being? Can I align myself with those every day unconditionally?
What a lovely touch base. Can you, every morning, everyone, if you just thought to touch into those 5 things and say, how can I be an expression of that in my day? How profound a change that you could begin to create in your life. And speaking of profound, I want to acknowledge Ellie, because I don't think these are showing up. Let's see. Nope. Ellie says, Jerome, I follow you on Facebook and your work has had a profound effect on my life. Huge appreciation. And Lisa has weighed in and said, thank you, with numerous exclamation points, which is lovely. So let's talk a little bit about, I know that people can find you on social media. You're very active and you share and espouse so much wisdom. But if someone wanted to actually be in participation with you, whether that be listening to you at a talk or that, you've created a workshop or there's something going on, can you share a little bit more how people can find you and potentially work with you if that's an option?
Yeah, so I know you mentioned social media. So the 3 platforms I'm on the most are Facebook. My Facebook page is facebook.com/Coach Jerome Braggs. YouTube, you can just, search for me. I think it's YouTube/Jerome Braggs, or you can just search for Jerome Braggs YouTube. I have a lot of videos on there. Right. I also do videos, live videos and teachings and all that on Facebook a lot. And then also Instagram, and my Instagram handle is @Jerome_Braggs. Right now, as a matter of fact, I'm in the midst of talking about self-love all week. Hey. So on my Instagram and my Instagram stories. So if you go to my Instagram stories, you'll find that. If you want to learn about working with me, my website is jeromebraggs.com. You can see a little bit about the sessions. My website is undergoing a change. I've got all new services and I've got some retreats and some juicy stuff coming out. But as for right now, you can still partake in the services that are there, still offering there. And I'm getting ready to do a tour to several US cities to come and just do kind of an intensive day of coaching and intuitive sessions. So if you follow me on in any of those places, get my newsletter on my webpage or follow me on my social media platforms, you'll get announcements about that. I'll be announcing a lot of that now.
Fantastic.
But that's how if you want to coach with me or you want to work with me one-on-one or any of that, you can find out how to do that in that space.
Great. So everybody will be signing up. So what we'll do is I'll invite Jerome to put all his point of contact in the comments on here, and then I'll share them again on the event page so they're easy to find, so you're not madly having to write all those down, and you can see what he's up to. And then, as I had mentioned, I'd really like to acknowledge and recognize the work that you're doing with one of my soul sisters, Jill Prescott. Can you speak to a little bit about that work?
Yes. So Jill and I, probably about 2 months now, maybe longer. Jill, maybe I forgot. If I'm on here, please correct. If you're still on here, please correct me. We have been having conversations every other week, usually, around the topic of race and race relations, and looking at them from a metaphysical, spiritual perspective, looking at them from what the higher messages are for each of us, and understanding that each of us, no matter what color we are, no matter where we are coming from, we are playing a role in what's being created and what's being experienced. And we have an invitation to a role, to how to heal this, how to shift it. And so we're just really diving into the conversation, taking questions, looking at things that are arising around the spectrum, in the broader, in our lives, and looking at what it means, individually, and really trying to come at that space from the most loving and compassionate way, but also not taking your feet out of the fire either. Like understanding that each of us has a responsibility, that you don't get to go to sleep, right? You don't get to deny or step out or, any of that, no matter who you are, not just if you're a person of color or if you're not. Like, we all are in this together, and we're looking at how do we come together from a place of alignment with the divine, higher consciousness, and higher activity on the planet to shift this thing into a more loving space that works for all of us. So we've got some things, we got some live events that are coming up. One at the end of September. The location, I'm not sure if we have that yet, but
Jill has shared a link already on there.
Okay.
And I know you two have live conversations within a private group that people can request to join. And those typically, if I'm not mistaken, happen on Thursdays.
Yeah, they typically happen on Thursdays. This is a private group. It is a safe and sacred space in the group. So there are guidelines to the group. We hold those guidelines and those boundaries, because this is a conversation that can be very touchy. And again, we're wanting to hold it in a space where everybody is open, everybody can be as connected to love as they can, but that the shift happens, and that we're not just all running around in our triggers, in our wounds around that space. Because we're speaking of healing wounds tonight. There are a lot of emotional wounds to be healed around race on all sides. So we're kind of speaking a lot about how do you heal that, and what are they, and how do they show up? And again, from a higher perspective, not saying it's the best perspective and the only perspective, but it's the one that we have. And a lot of people have been finding a lot of benefit out of that, which is really swelling our hearts.
Yes, and that's how I found Jerome, everyone, is through Jill and them participating in these discussions together. And I will express it again, my gratitude for finding an individual that creates such a safe space to have these conversations. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, everybody, look at that. Look at that perfectly timed hour with so much goodness in it, just filled with love. So thank you so much. Thank you to everyone that showed up. If you watch this, or even if you have been watching this and more questions arise, please post them in the comments. Both Jerome and I will address them. I can always tag him in them, and he can pop in and offer any more wisdom as it comes up. We will be sharing those links as to how you can find him and follow him to get daily wisdom as well. And then Jill has been kind enough to share the link to that private group where they do their conversations surrounding the topic of race. Thank you so much for being here again. It's been such a privilege, and I'm sure we will connect and have more conversations in the future if I have my way.
Yes, please. This was an honor and a joy, and I felt the love.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Good night, everybody.